I'm very aware that we are the main thing standing between you and lunch, so we will seek to provide you with value and insight. I won't use the rock star word, but I want to emphasise the quality of the people on the stage with me right now. Two of these three companies didn't even exist more than a dozen years ago. All are between $300 and $600 million companies that have grown through some of the lessons and insights that my friend Bowen just outlined to you. So this is a great chance to hear where the rubber hits the road or where the photons hit the screen, because they are all tech companies. So please make good use of Slido. So we'll start at the beginning. While I'm a tech tragic, I assume that not all of you are, so I'll just ask you each to say, what does your company do, what is the problem you solve, and what is your footprint in the States? Alliv, I'll start with you.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. I'm one of the co-founders of the education technology company called Kami. We've been doing this actually almost 13 years now, so same with Bowen and Craig. In Phil here, we started at Velocity in Auckland Uni, so props to Velocity. So we are currently in 1 in 10 schools, K-12 schools in the US. So if you have kids who go to schools, high chance they would have used Kami in the US. So we're in 180 countries, but US is our biggest market. Currently, around 70 million teachers and students are using our product. Basically, Kami is everything that teachers and students use to be productive and do things in the classrooms. I always tell people that it's like the new pen and paper in the classroom, because they do everything with Kami, and we actually help teachers save a lot of time, schools and districts save a lot of money, but also give students and teachers an opportunity to do what they do best, and that's actually love learning. Technology for them is something that helps them learn, but not actually remove the very important bit of education, which is the human side of things, as we've heard with Claudia and the previous talk. But that's basically what Kami is.
Cool. Phil.
Yeah, kia ora everyone. I'm Phil, one of the co-founders of Auror. We are a crime reporting and intelligence software platform. So any shoplifting, theft, fraud, violence that occurs in retail, they report that into our platform to then provide that through to the police as well. So there's about 30% of all reported crime in New Zealand comes through our platform to police. So we give about 500 extra police on the street every year through technology. We also help with all the digital evidence collection for non-retail crime as well. Started in 4 stores in West Auckland over a decade ago. We're now in 50,000 stores around the world. And for us, the US market is our key market, right? So we do have, we're operating New Zealand, Australia, US, Canada, UK and Europe. But from day one, the US was always our core focus.
Would it be half of revenue?
Yeah, I think it's probably about 85% of all revenue is international, and a big chunk of that is from the US. And by the end of this year, we'll have, I think, 7 of the top 10 largest retailers on the platform, and again, helping them around retail crime. And for us, again, I think we've got 50 odd people in the US, but 250 globally.
Cool.
Hello everyone, I'm Young. So I run Serato. We make some of the world's most iconic DJ and music production software. So in music, DJs and music producers basically choose their technology based on community and genre. That there's no procurement style or methodology there. They choose software based on what do their friends use and what do their heroes use. And so in parts of the world where dance and drum and bass is more popular, our competitors are more dominant. And the parts of the world where hip-hop and American pop is more popular, Serato is more dominant. So America to us, it's not just our biggest market, it's the way we propel to the rest of the world, because America has that cultural impact to the rest of the world. So we focus a lot on America these days.
Cool. One of the things that you have each effectively done is create great brands in the US. I should also disclose I was lucky enough to be an investor in Serato, so I'll just disclose that. But I was wearing a Serato t-shirt at South by Southwest music festival in Austin, Texas, and a person comes up to me and offers me $100 cash for the shirt off my back, which was a sign of brand love. Likewise, Phil, I didn't mention this to you, but I was on a plane to Singapore, and the guy beside me saw my passport, said, "Oh, you're from New Zealand." That's where our crime prevention software comes from. Have you heard of Auror? The guy worked for Walmart. But, and I don't have a personal anecdote about Kami, but you have all built very effective, engaging brands in North America. How'd you do it? Young.
I think I guess if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have said we sell software, which is the wrong answer, really. And I think what we've realised that in our industry, it's really about representing culture. We're lucky enough, the real high time of Serato in the early 2000s was essentially when Serato became known as digital DJing, but it was also really the birth and the discovery of the internet. And so because of that, Serato became known as digital DJing. And we got so much love from that moment that Serato became part of a lot of hip-hop songs. And I think we realised from that as we're not selling software, we're essentially accepted as part of American pop culture. And so more and more we realised that actually we need to treat that with respect, and we need to promote that with respect. And most of our customers essentially come through promoters and word of mouth of people who love that association with showing the world music.
Cool. Phil?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of things on my mind for that. The first is, I think we know going into the US from New Zealand that you're starting from a disadvantage. And the first time we entered the US, we'd already been into Australia, and you roll in there with like, hey, we work with all the biggest retailers in New Zealand, Australia, and they're like, well, who is that? And we don't care. Who is your US customer, and are you from the US? And ultimately, where is New Zealand at that point in time as well? And so you're starting from this point of going, okay, I've always got to go above and beyond, and therefore that requires time on the ground. And I think all of us spend a lot of time on planes, and it's just part of what we have to do. Even in this world, we go, great, you can Zoom everyone these days. It's still, you have to spend time in market. And I think what that starts to build is relationships with people, and we were very deliberate from the very beginning. It took us 4 years of, I suppose, researching the market by going there before we officially entered that market. So you start to build, one, a bit of a brand around just being there, and they start to feel like, okay, you're part of the industry, in our case. And then we start to go there with innovation. And again, I think Bowen and Craig touched on it just before. We're not so hierarchical here, and goes back to sort of that humbleness and asking the question. Whereas I think in the US, it's quite a lot of hierarchy and ego, and therefore we went in there and would ask every question we wanted to ask. We didn't care who it was. If it was the CEO of Walmart all the way through to the person who works on the checkout. And every time we went back to the US, we brought more ideas and innovation, and we just spent time talking about that with them. So we got the brand reputation of being innovative, and every time we came back, we had something new to show. And so it shows we actually listened and took that away and then executed on that. And then lastly, and I think, we've got some good war stories, I think, between us around trade shows. We recognise that we're talking about the retail industry and often security and loss prevention. It was pretty boring and stale. And our very first trade show we went to, we were like, well, this is what everyone's meant to do. So we put on our suits and we went there. And we realised quite quickly that we blended in with everyone else. And also at the time, I think our colours were blue. And if you go to the US, every colour was blue, white and red. We're like, okay, we've got to actually change our brand for that as well. And we started having fun. And at these trade shows, we would be the booth that people wanted to come to just to hang out. Whether or not they're buying from us, they wanted to escape every other vendor that was there. And, we'd bring in New Zealand ice cream and New Zealand wine, and we'd smuggle these things in. And we just became the people that they actually want to go and hang out with. And I think this built that brand rather than just being purely on a product or on a logo. It was that feeling of just being part of the team.
Cool.
I'll follow up on that trade show because, as Phil said, we have fantastic experience during trade shows. But quickly on context, like Kami only raised $2 million capital for the first decade of it, right? And we've been very good at, doing big things with nothing. And for us, we saw the opportunity of making teachers happy, because if you make them happy, they would tell everybody how great you are. And we've always been a product-led growth. And trade shows are the best way to actually be in front of them. So when we first started doing trade shows, again, like there's three of us, very introverted co-founders, no idea what to do in a trade show. And however, we did bring a lot of Whitaker's chocolates with us. And that was a great icebreaker. And, Hingy and Jordan with their Kiwi accents would be like, would you like a chocolate from New Zealand? And teachers would stop and actually like, you're from New Zealand? And he's from China, and they hear this Kiwi accent from him, and they're just shocked at what is happening. And chocolate, absolutely. And then those are the early days of getting their attention. And for us, being a Kiwi company was a great advantage to stand out from this big trade show hall with our tiny, tiny booth, comparing to now that we are right next to Google, biggest booth in the trade show. But we started with nothing but, a bunch of Kiwi kids just trying to sell them software. But again, like the brand love is from actually getting to know those end users. So we spent a lot of time doing trade shows, but also we spent a lot of time doing school visits. So none of us were from the US and has been to a US classroom. So we made it a point that almost everyone in the company, unfortunately we can't do that now, but there was a point that everyone in the company gets to visit an American classroom where they get to sit down and observe and see the chaos that the teacher needs to deal with every day. And just the amazing things that they do with so little. And actually that drives everybody in the team to fully understand what's happening with the teachers day to day. And they go back here in our office in Auckland that they will have a list of things they want to fix and do because they actually saw the real person actually using the product. So right now when you talk to an American teacher, ask about Kami, thankfully they said they still love us. And that's the brand love that we're building.
Given that evolved nicely into a discussion around trade shows, Young, how important for your industry?
Oh, actually, a lot more important than I would have said a few years ago. I mean, post-COVID, you were questioning the trade show and whether it would continue, and the internet is everywhere. But it's just the sheer concentration of everyone in the industry there at the same time. It builds on each other. The cycle time and conversations is quick there. The ability to propel to the rest of the industry is quick there. So I'd say that trade shows are just as important in the internet age as before.
Cool. And I guess you have different size footprints in market as well. Phil, you just about own Denver these days, don't you? How many people?
I think we're close to 40 in Denver, 50 across, but I think there's about 39 tech companies in Denver,
A lot of people
for New Zealand.
a digital company.
Yeah, but again, like we deal with huge retail enterprises and law enforcement across the US, and so you've got to have people on the ground. And trade show scale is really interesting because I still vividly remember our very first trade show we went to, and we took this mentality of we'd been to one or two trade shows in Australia, so we know what we're doing, right? We turn up at this first trade show, and we brought with us a pull-up banner and a computer screen that we took as hand luggage on in New Zealand, and we walked into this convention centre, and there were literally cranes erecting 2-story booths, and we're like, where are we? What have we done, right? We find our corner, and we're literally in the corner at the back of this huge convention centre, which is, 5 football fields long. And then we said, well, where's our booth? It's like, no, you get not even a piece of carpet, you get a square, yes. And we didn't pay for the luxury carpet, which, like, these days you do because you're standing all day on that, right? And we had to whip out to Walmart. We had to buy a big TV, a table, and a sheet to put over the table to make it look classy. This is when I was still in the suit as well, and we ended up putting a win this TV sticker on the TV because we couldn't take the TV home with us. All right, so this is the New Zealand innovation for you. We had the fish bowl, you get your chocolates from New Zealand, and you put your business card in there to win the TV because we couldn't take it anyway. Fast forward, and so we learned quite quickly from, next trade show, we've got to up our game a little bit more. It was very reflective going back to we went to the same convention centre 8 years later, last year, and we were the headline sponsor of that. And so it was just a massive shift for us. But also, again, it was because we'd figured out over time how to do this the right way. And I think just that was the first inkling of us of the scale in the US is way different, not just from it's a big country, but everything they do is bigger.
Awesome segue, dude. So lessons, what you wish you knew now that when you were 5 years earlier in your growth trajectory in the US. Start with you, Alliv.
I think the learnings that I have now that I can partake like an upcoming edtech company would be different because the transformation, especially post-pandemic, has been massive that what would have worked before wouldn't have worked now. But I think the biggest thing that definitely wouldn't change is just finding the right people, right? Like, thankfully, we've got fantastic people who has been with us for so long and been through the journey all along. I think it's just having the right people with you. Another thing, I think the biggest learning and regret is not growing to the US immediately. When we first started after Velocity, we were like, okay, we'll stay in New Zealand in a way that we'll start pitching to university lecturers and see how it goes. So our first year, we raised $10,000. Lasted us the whole year, but didn't get us anyway, and nobody wanted to fund us afterwards. So that pivoting moment, we decided, like, look, we have nothing to lose because we literally have nothing. So we would focus on the biggest market and see how it goes. So I wished we would have gone to the US at the start. Same effort, just different location.
Phil, how about you, apart from going for the flash carpet?
Yeah, still great carpet. No, firstly, just on the scale piece, two things recently, data points that was interesting to me. One, population of Auckland now is 1.8 million. Walmart has 2.1 million employees themselves. Right? New Zealand export last year was 105 billion New Zealand dollars. The US alone loses 100 billion US dollars just to retail crime every year. Just to retail crime. So, like, this is the scale we're dealing with here. I think our insights are similar around you got to do some things that don't scale when you start, and some of those things we still do today, which is, again, getting to the US. And again, I remember we actually did this amazing pilot with Walmart initially, and that was when they were still like, who are you? We did this great pilot, fantastic results. They ended up choosing a competitor purely based on price, but we didn't give up, we kept going at them. And we said, this is what you're gonna see with the competitor, we'll stay in touch with you. It started to play out true, and they said, well, here's some of the issues we're seeing. And we said, we'll come and see you tomorrow. I said, okay, great. Like, they don't think about that, right? And I got a call from a co-founder who would put up into the US. He said, great news, we've got an opportunity back in with Walmart. I told them that you'd be there tomorrow in Auckland, right? And so you book your flight on the plane, and thanks to time zones, you actually get there on time. And those things you just have to keep doing as you don't scale. But when it comes to scaling, my biggest learning and probably a regret is the things now, like I wish we were scaling what we're doing now 2 years ago. And I think one of the biggest challenges of New Zealand is historic lack of access to capital, but also I think the lack of mindset around how big the opportunity actually is. And so I think we're always slightly behind, and I love seeing like what Craig's doing at Halter, and I think Colin and the team at Tracksuit as well, who are raising enough capital, or more than enough capital to really go after it. I think we take this scrappy mentality. We're particularly from the era of that there wasn't a whole lot of capital around, and so we try to do the things we did well here in the US market, and it doesn't work. So now we're sort of working very hard this past 12 months of how do we rebuild our entire company around that scale piece.
Cool. Jan, 2020 hindsight?
I guess I grew up watching American television, watching Hollywood movies, and a lot of the stuff I see online originates from America. So I guess I would have thought 10 years ago that I know America. I know the culture, I know what it's like on the street. As it turns out, American TV and movies aren't a true reflection of reality. But even the things I see online, we all often talk about the internet bubble, but there's also an internet lens of what you can see in New Zealand. And so I guess for me, the hindsight is you think you know it, but it's probably worth approaching America with the same curiosity that you would an exotic market. That's so complicated, it's so deep, and there's so many intricacies there. It just goes back to get there and learn the culture, learn the people. It's a bit different than what you might think.
About a dozen years ago, Serato took a pretty gutsy step and effectively made its software free, or at least a basic version of it, to the market, and then people had to upgrade to get a professional version that you could make money from. In hindsight, was that the right pricing decision, and what is the role that pricing plays in the US market for you?
So I think it was the right decision. The history of Serato, so before that, we were a company of royalties and licensing. And so to a lot of the end users, Serato was free. You bought your high-end kit, so you got it. And so giving it away for free, people weren't used to paying for it. But what it really did is it propelled us into general use of every single DJ. And so so suddenly it was the be everywhere strategy. So we're in every piece of kit. And so we essentially moved from an exclusive high-end piece of kit to the Android model, where we still had exclusive high-end pieces of kit, but we supported every piece of hardware. And a lot of the beginner bits of hardware that we don't make a lot of money from, actually, in the long run, we do, because people start out on Serato, and then later, when they're ready to pay, they'll pay for Serato. So I think it was the right choice at the time, because it really gave us the market share. And then later, many years later, we get many options because we have a very big customer base.
Cool. So whereas you're D2C, you guys are more B2B effectively. Did you find, interesting your comments on pricing strategy, whether it's necessary to take a haircut early on to get a couple of foundation and then go from there? Can I start with you, Alliv?
For us, pricing, we have a free version, so any teacher can start using Kami for free, and that would give them all the basic tools just to get them started. When we first started selling to the US, I was the one assigned to figure out how to sell and to grow, and I have no idea how to sell. All I know is I know how to attract attention from teachers. And one thing that I learned is that during that time, they didn't have tech budgets yet. Thankfully, it's different now. But what they did have was the printing budget and the art budget. So it was around $150 budget that they can use to buy supplies. And that was the opportunity for me to try and sell the premium features of Kami. Here's $99 license that you can purchase online that would give you license to use Kami plus your students. So up to 100 students can use Kami. So from that, it actually scaled really fast because teachers who love the product actually started purchasing it because they already have that budget that they use, and actually saves them a lot of money instead of printing. And then they would then tell the other teachers in their schools about it. And then that's when the opportunity opens up, and for me to talk to the schools and say, hey, you have 5 teachers using it. Why not get a school-wide license for $1,000 to $2,000? And it actually saves you a lot of printing budget because you don't have to spend all these money on printers and maintenance and all that stuff, plus the time, budget, the time saving from that as well. So schools actually ended up saving a lot of money by purchasing Kami. And now the whole strategy is different because now we're selling to states. We sell to Louisiana, to LA, to New York, and that's a different playing game. However, it still saves states a lot of money. So in terms of pricing, we just try to find what would be available from the end user, what's available to them, that they can immediately purchase your product, and see how you can upgrade and find other opportunities, other budgets that you can get to. So that's how we did it.
Cool. Phil?
Yeah, I think our biggest lesson, like I mentioned before, we lost from that pilot with Walmart on price. And we went in there, one with, hey, we've done the hard yards in Australia and New Zealand and we know what our market pricing should be. Secondly, we had great results from a pilot to prove that was the case, and actually we would, 20x the value back in terms of what we could help save them. It turns out no one was prepared to put their name to those savings, and so it was a good lesson in actually understanding how do you do proper enterprise sales and get the right champion involved. But in terms of pricing, that's where we ultimately lost that deal initially. There's a great redemption arc because we ended up getting back into Walmart, and now we've been there with them for 4 or 5 years. But the thing for us, the learning was, and we took this into the UK market actually, do whatever you need to do for those first 3 lighthouse customers. And for us, it was all about building credibility and network quickly. And it's always an interesting discussion, say, with the board when you're going, hey, we're going to this new market, everyone else has got this pricing, we're going with this pricing versus our other customers. But we've figured out that that's actually the best way of doing it is, and I like to turn it almost into imagine that discount you're giving is purely a marketing budget. And that's how you sort of sell that internally, because you end up with these amazing champion customers who are prepared to go, often on record and tell everyone else that they're doing it. And when you're going into a new market, you need that. And so for us, that was the big change. And like we are, B to big B in terms of it's all enterprise sales. We're just moving now into working with law enforcement and commercializing that in the US. And the difference here is that there's 1 police force in New Zealand, 8 in Australia, 43 in the UK, 18,000 in the US. And so we're having to figure out now how are we going to go to market with quite a different model than what we've been doing the last 10 years from a pricing point of view, but also just a general commercial go-to-market point of view.
Cool. That's almost pricing as customer marketing.
100%, yeah.
You're buying customers. Yeah. A couple of questions coming in on the Slido. Given the need to be close to the customer, is there a way for New Zealand startups to scale into the US without losing talent to the US? Jan? Have you lost talent to the US?
We've hired a lot more Americans and lost people to the US. Hasn't really been a problem for us, actually. We engage the US more and more. We've lost more people to Europe for their big OE, actually, rather than the US.
Cool. Phil?
Yeah, when I say you lose people, I think, again, you do have to have people on the ground in the US, and the learning that we're learning, I think, is also from a number of businesses, is that you've got to have the right mixture of people from the company and new people to get the culture right. And I think, again, Bowen and that spoke about the difference in culture in the US too. So that's a big part. We've actually been moving people around the world, which is an awesome opportunity for our local team here. We've recently put someone up into the US market. I do think you have to have early days someone on the ground, which in our case was a co-founder for that, just living and breathing in that market. But in reverse, I think we can get more people down to New Zealand is the bigger opportunity for us.
Especially in the age of remote working, right? Like how do we keep that Kiwi-ness in our businesses? Like for us, like Kenji and I believe that the heart of our company is New Zealand. So we try to hire as much as we can within the country. However, our go-to-market team is in the US, because you can't change the fact that we need the team to be out there talking to customers. And most of our go-to-market people are ex-teachers or ex-educators, so they talk the same language. So, same as Phil, we fly our team back and forth between New Zealand and US and US to New Zealand. The Kiwis learning more about the market by going to the classroom and meeting customers, but the Americans coming over to New Zealand to learn about the culture. And this is what Kami is all about. This is, the no dicks policy is all about, that we all know and actually try to replicate in our company. So we do that. We do that cultural exchange. But again, like the heart still remains in New Zealand.
Thank you. Another question from Anonymous. I have a secret theory that Anonymous is actually fellow KTM rider Damien O'Connor over there, and he's just doing them all anonymously. But here's the next one. How will AI interrupt your business models, or perhaps indeed enhance? Phil, I imagine you are all over AI like white on rice. Can we start with you?
I think everyone's trying their best to see how it's going to impact on their companies. You know, and there's again big opportunity. Heard about earlier today around how it can improve what you're doing and how you're doing it internally. I think about less as interrupting, but one of the challenges we're working with is how do you help when you've got more AI assistance with things? And I'll talk for that twofold. One, everyone wants more AI in their life right now, and all of our stakeholders say that to us. We then go and build an AI part of the product, and then the retailers turn around and say, oh, we now have an AI committee that you've got to go through, and great news, we haven't done this before, you're the first guinea pig to go through it, and so what we've been demanding you build, which you've now built, is now going to be held up for the next 6 months, and them asking questions about AI that they don't know anything about. And so that's quite frustrating from a product point of view, but you have to go through that process. The second part is around the use of AI, particularly in our space when you're talking about crime reports and evidence. It's that how is AI being used as part of that process initially, because it goes all the way through to the court system. And I think that's probably an area where technology is not heavily used to the same degree elsewhere. So there's a lot of reticence around the use of technology. But also the question becomes, well, is evidence being, how do you know that it's the right evidence or video file that is now being used in a prosecution? And so, building around having checks and balances in place that actually, and what we do is actually, if you can pull it straight from a video system, have it digitally stamped the whole way through, you get a better chain of custody versus it being put onto a USB stick or a CD, which still happens today, put into a police officer's car and driven around and then left around at the station. You can actually have a better end-to-end chain of custody that way. But I think ultimately AI is going to help for us make more connections across crime that's occurring, because 10% of people are doing 60% of the crime based on our current data set, and it's probably higher without things being connected together.
I remember seeing a demo by the FBI at South by actually, where they took a photograph from one angle, and from that one angle were able to generate a 360-degree photograph. And this is a couple of years ago now. Completely changes the game, I guess, when there's a suspect in play. Yeah. For you, elementary school students, that your platform is enabling the teaching of today are effectively the first AI native generation. How's it impacting Kami?
We've always been intentional on how we use AI. Sam Altman is actually one of our early investors, and we used to hang out at the open AI offices at the beginning whenever we meet him. But AI.
That's a very cool name drop, by the way.
No, because they always say that this is our opportunity to put AI everywhere and say we do this cool new technology. It's like, no, we're very intentional about it, because in terms of education, even though U.S. schools are way ahead in terms of ed tech comparable to the rest of the world, there's still a lot of foundational things that needs to be addressed and solved for it to actually work. We treat AI as a companion to a teacher, not a replacement. Unfortunately, there are a lot of edtech companies that are popping everywhere that they're like, no, this is the new way of learning. It's like, no, we're humans. We needed the passing down of wisdom, the passing down of stories that AI cannot replace, and teachers are core of that classroom. So if we do use AI, how do we use it to help the teachers, to help the students? How do we educate the teachers who are already, lacking time of the day learning new things? How do we actually naturally teach them and show them that they can use AI to help them save more time in their day? But also the students, especially the young kids, like how will we help educate them and introduce them to this technology so that they're more mindful, they're more well-educated in how they use AI in their lives? So there's a lot of thinking that puts into that. It's slower than some industries, but it's very intentional. Again, it's, millions of students and teachers that we're trying to help.
Cool. I remember reading an interview with Fatboy Slim where he said it basically took 2,000 hours to become a decent turntablist, if I've pronounced that right. That AI must completely change that equation for your game.
Not as much as you might think, actually. I guess the technology, from my point of view, to play two songs on top of each other have been there for like 80 years. These days, more and more, a DJ is there to make the event, to bring the community together. And so it doesn't change any of that. DJs are still required to make a party, to make a moment. But I think then for DJing and music production, machine learning should unlock a level of tools and a dimension of sound and music that you otherwise couldn't have before now. So it's things like stems, where I can take a song and suddenly I can just take the vocals out. Or it's song analysis, where I can say jump to the chorus. And so I think it should be the ultimate tool for creators who like to create either moments or create other bits of work that will allow you to access and play with music in ways that you've never thought of. I think it's a great thing, because a lot of people still do this for the joy of creation. For every DJ or guitarist who can make money doing it, there's a billion people who just do it for the joy of it.
Cool. Hey, I want to talk about M&A a little bit, and also shareholder books, but before we do, we've had another question come in on Slido from Brian Calder. Thank you, Brian. Which sectors do you think could make the biggest mutual benefit out of the US business investment visas? Which sectors do you think could make the biggest mutual benefit out of the US business investment visas?
Is that like the active investor?
I think that's the H1B.
I've got a.
I assume.
Okay, I've got a bit of a view on that one. And there's been a lot of talk in the last 12 months around getting more capital into New Zealand, which again is a good thing for the country. I feel like what we're still missing is bringing in more experienced people into the country, and like this is where I worry, as we've got a really burgeoning tech sector in particular, we don't have the scale experience in country, and so importing that, I actually do think that overall we've got a lot of capital, both in New Zealand but also that's willing to come and invest in New Zealand. And I think it's great having more and more people wanting to come down and be based here. I think I spot Rob in the audience from Shasta Ventures, one of our investors as well, that has become a friend of New Zealand, wants to be based down here as well and provide capital, which is great. We need more people who understand the complexity of scale into a market like the US, but can be based here locally. And I'm talking like product marketing, I'm talking product managers, like all these different roles which are specialised. New Zealand, again, we've got great talent, but we're generalists by nature, and we haven't seen, because we just haven't had 2 or 3 cycles of these companies coming through, we don't have that scale. So I'll be advocating for
basically
more people.
more Bowens, coming back to New Zealand.
Yeah, both expats, but also just like, again, I think we're almost the second time around here, one COVID being the first, where we're missing the opportunity of attracting world-class Americans who don't want to live in America right now to New Zealand, and we're still focused more on the capital side rather than the actual human experience side.
Yeah, cool. And sorry, just to clarify, I realise now the question was intended around the active investor visas, not the H1Bs. Yeah, thank you. Going back to M&A and probably actually starting with shareholder books, all 3 of your companies now have North American investors on your books, in one case, majority investor. How has that changed the game for you? And importantly, how has it opened new opportunities for you from the networks and the connections it brings? Happy to start with you, Alliv.
We recently did a partial exit. We call it a partial exit because we paid off our early shareholders, and we've partnered with a VC, which is Boston Venture Investment Fund. For the past year, it's been fantastic because the goal was to find a partner that can help us scale to the next level of the business. who has that experience, who actually back founders, because we've been, courted by so many VCs out there for great opportunities, but we wanted to stay. Hinji and I wanted to stay, so we wanted to partner with someone who wouldn't replace us from day one. And they've been fantastic. They've helped us actually reset our executive team. We now have an executive team of 12 who are mostly professionals with a lot of experience in EdTech, and helped us with M&A. So within a couple of months of being with BV, we acquired another company based in the UK called Book Creator. And the future and the goal right now is to find more of those companies that can fit into the Kami suite. So we either build things ourselves or we find a fantastic company who can fit into the view of
And
vision for
BV
Kami.
there is Boston Ventures, who are a cornerstone investor now.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, so we've got a small investment from our Series B in 2021 through Shasta Ventures from the US, and then most recently had Axon, which is the global public safety technology leader, make all the body cams and tasers globally as most recent
Were they a
investors.
competitor previously?
We were on track to be competitors.
A frenemy.
In the future. We had them on our 2x2 there, but we saw the benefit of working together, and actually what they've helped us do is one, starting to work through that scale into the US law enforcement and public safety space. But secondly, and this is again, the point was made by Craig earlier around like capital is the cheapest part of that bargain, but like being introduced, and I went to a founder summit that Axon hosted with all these other tech company founders. Just the access to people was actually probably the most important thing, and understanding and learning from them. That's probably been the biggest unlock for me.
Interesting. Yeah, Jan?
Well, we're 6 months in actually, and we've got new Canadian majority owners. They've pretty much just left us alone and allowed us to be continue being a proud New Zealand company, which I'm very appreciative of.
Because you're so brilliant.
Because we're so brilliant. May it continue.
A useful question, given we've got 1:45 left to finish with, is when you look across the New Zealand tech industry, looking at North America, what's the biggest trap that you see tech companies falling into as they contemplate the US?
Biggest trap would be not doing it, right? Like not, like having. Recently, I've met a lot of early founders who are very hesitant about growing to the U.S. They're like, oh, if I'm going to go outside of New Zealand, I might do Australia. I was like, no, again, the same learning that we've had is that we could have grown faster early on if we did go focus on the U.S. early on. And that's, I guess, one of the biggest mistakes is like if you have a fantastic product and you're solving a problem that is already in the U.S., like why not? What's stopping you to actually go to the U.S.?
So having the courage of your conviction.
Absolutely.
Phil?
A couple of quick thoughts. One, it's way harder, takes longer, and costs a lot more than you ever think. So be ready for that. I think secondly, take on board lots of advice from different people who've done it before, and then figure out what your own path is. Classic advice is choose one city or one state. Don't try and take on all of the US. For us, we knew it was the opposite to get our network and power. So we took on the entire country, and they also say never have Walmart as your first customer because they'll eat you alive. And our very first customer we went to was Walmart, again, for good reason. So I think those two things are important. And then lastly, I'd just say in terms of advice, like utilize what people have done before, and use the Kiwi mafia. Like there's so many Kiwis across the world that we don't actually tap into, and we try and do it ourselves for the very first time every time. And I think there's again great people right across the world, if it's with AmCham, Kia, and others who give you the unfair advantage is that we are a small country that knows everyone, or they know your cousin. Everywhere you go, you know someone that knows someone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing we should be leveraging more. That's our unfair advantage as a country.
Cool. I'd just do a plug for Beachhead Advisors and the NZTE network there as well. We've got 192 of them there for a reason in the US. Young, take us home.
Nothing they haven't said. I think it's just don't try to do everything from your armchair at home. You've got to get in market. You've got to get out and talk to people. It's important.
Okay. Hey, thank you, all three of you, for the honesty and bluntness of your responses. Really insightful, and yeah, really appreciate your time. And Fran, I brought it home a minute over. Is that okay? Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Mark.